On May 19th, 1983, a woman by the name of Diane Downs was carjacked and shot along with her 3 children. Investigators would soon question if this was the truth or there was more to the story than she was letting on. Okay, let's go. Elizabeth Diane Fredrickson was born August 7th, 1955, making her a Leo, in Phoenix, Arizona, in the US of A, to Wes and Willadine Fredrickson.
Hold on. Willadine.
Willadine.
One name, one word?
Yeah, Willa Dean.
Willadine.
And Wes.
I mean, where's Wesley Snipes? Like,
Wes.
where's Craven? Like, I get it.
Willadine, yeah.
But Willadine is not forgivable.
Yeah, it's different. She was the oldest of 4 children and lived a fairly normal life.
Apart from the fact that she had a face of a pug.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
Her mother and father worked at the US Postal Service, and as a child, Diane was known for having a deep love of animals. Her father once stated that she would bug her parents for a horse, as a couple of her friends had horses and they finally gave in when she was a freshman. "Daddy, I want a pony." It was mentioned that her parents were devoted to their children, but raised them without a lot of affection. Wes and his wife wanted their kids to be strong, and in their words, they shouldn't show any emotion. It's not how you raise kids, just saying.
I'm not sure how devoted yet loveless or affectionless, how those two marry together.
Oh, somehow they do.
Yeah.
Throughout her teenage years, Diane would be called an oddball by others due to her sheltered life, being influenced by her Baptist upbringing and strict parents. They did not believe in fashion or trends, making Diane look and feel out of touch. At 14, she would rebel, cut her hair short, bleach it blonde, and started wearing more fashionable clothes. She also dropped her first name of Elizabeth to become known as Diane. By this time, she started to notice boys more and would behave rather, as so many reports said, provocatively.
Okay, same girl.
At the age of 15, a boy by the name of Diane Downs, Stephen, who lived across the street from Diane, would fall in love with her, and by 16, their relationship became sexual. Diane was also mentioned as being an intelligent and conscientious... conscientious. She's conscientious.
She's conscientious.
Conscientious. Diane was also mentioned as being an intelligent and conscientious student with a high IQ. Once she graduated school, she was still dating Stephen, and he would enlist in the Navy, whilst Diane attended the Pacific Coast Baptist Bible College, where she would later be expelled for being promiscuous and would go back home to live with her parents. Stephen and Diane would see each other as much as possible, and after one of her visits to Stephen's house in Chandler, she decided not to return home. "I'm not coming home, Dad." There are reports that Wes, her father, was so angry with this that he turned up to Stephen's house with a shotgun and an ultimatum. "Marry my daughter or else."
That's what? I'll shoot you in the head?
I guess so. He had a shotgun. "Otherwise, I'm going to be mad." By the time they were 19, Stephen and Diane would marry on the 13th of November 1973, and things started to become rather difficult pretty quickly, and cracks started to show in their marriage. Hello? 19.
19's very young.
It was only 19.
But also he married her.
Yeah, silly.
Was there any word on what side the issues were on?
Pretty much all around money and work, and I think they just also didn't really mesh well. They probably shouldn't have been together.
That's the funny thing too. Like when you get together so young and you stay together,
Yep.
you grow, and a lot of the times you will grow as different separate people.
Yeah, because you're young.
Yeah. Anyway, as you were.
Stephen was working long hours and money was tight. Diane would claim that 2 weeks after their wedding, Stephen would take another woman out on a date and arrive home in the early morning hours, claiming that his car broke down.
Okay.
The car just broke down.
So he stepped out.
Apparently.
According to her. Is this from her, do we think? That's
yeah, it's her word, so who knows?
Recount comes from. Okay. I mean, at the same time, though, like, I'm sure this woman is a nightmare.
Oh, I bet she bloody was. In 1974, despite their issues, Diane would become pregnant, and in October of that same year, she gave birth to Christy Ann Downs. Not long after giving birth, Diane went back to work part-time at a local store. However, when the money ran out and Stephen was out of work, they would all move into Diane's parents' place. When Christy was 6 months old, Diane would enlist in the Navy, but left only a month month after completing only 3 weeks of basic training. Diane would claim it was because Stefan was neglecting their child. However, Stephen claimed that all she did was complain and was asking how to get out, or she would go AWOL, absent without official leave. A year later, in 1975, the relationship was just up and down, with Diane and Christy continuously going back to her parents' house, although Diane would say later that Stephen made her leave, and when she would leave, her parents would end up sending her back to her husband. In 1976, Diane, who had become pregnant again, would give birth to their second child, Cheryl Lynn Downs. If your relationship's not good, don't have a baby, let alone 2.
But also,
or 3.
It's kind of like, if your relationship is failing to the point where your husband's stepping out, you're not happy, both of you are not happy. 1, why are you still sleeping together? And 2, why are you having unprotected sex?
Yeah.
Because if he's fucking other people, and you could possibly be too, you could catch something.
After the birth of Cheryl, surprise, surprise, the relationship was still strained, and Diane would continue to run off to her parents' house. Around this time, Stephen decided he did not want any more children and would go and get a vasectomy. That unfortunately failed when Diane fell pregnant again. However, this time she had a schmishmortion and Stephen went for the snip again. Stephen and Diane would move to Flagstaff, Arizona, where Stephen took up 2 jobs to provide for his family, and the relationship continued to get worse, with Diane even claiming that her boss, where she was currently working at the time, had raped her, and by 1978 they moved again to Mesa. Is it Mesa or Mesa? Mesa, Arizona.
Mesa, Arizona. Do we know if she actually was R-worded?
Look, one thing with Diane, she lies a lot, so I actually don't know. Part of me is just like, maybe she was fed up with where they were. She tried to make it, I don't know.
And I mean, you want to believe all women, you want to believe all victims, but sometimes the spidey sense just goes ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, when I read that, I was kind of like,
red flag.
On the play. Oh, my voice is good for that today.
On the play.
On the play. The couple would end up working for the same company, manufacturing mobile homes, and it was here that Diane seduced a young co-worker by the name of Russ Phillips.
So she seduced him.
Yeah.
So they are both stepping out on each other.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
How old was Russ?
I'm not too sure. I couldn't see, but younger
But
than
he's
her.
a young...
Yeah,
Okay.
younger little man.
So she's a predator now too.
Diane would become pregnant, and even though Stephen knew about the affair, both men asked for her to terminate the pregnancy, because it's not his baby.
So did she get a schmishmortion?
No. She decided to go through with the pregnancy, and in December 1979, Stephen Daniel Downs was born. Can I just say, how weird is that? You were literally calling your child your husband's name, even though his real father was someone else. What the fuck?
I just literally thought that. I was like, well, that's weird.
That's fucking weird.
Yeah, you also wouldn't want to name him after, like, the guy that you had an affair with.
No. To me, it's like, oh, I'm going to call him Stephen, but that's not my child, so who's your daddy?
Do you reckon... I think she did that to be spiteful.
No, I wouldn't be surprised.
Spite.
She's a fucking bitch. Stephen would end up taking the child as if it was his own, which part of me I'm like, oh, but...
No, that's a good man.
Yeah, not later on though, to me.
That's a bad man.
Good in some spots, not so good in the others.
Flawed. He's a flawed man.
Yeah. After the birth of her son, Diane started working at the post office and only allowed Russ to see his child when she required a babysitter, which apparently happened a lot. For this case, I read a book called Killer Mum, The True Story of Diane Downs by Barbara Daly, and there is a statement that is rather scary from one of Diane's babysitters, and I quote, "If Danny wanted attention," which I think is Stephen, went by the name Danny, "Diane would push him away, but the worst thing was one time I caught Cheryl jumping on the bed and I said that was not permitted. I made her sit in a chair and think about it. Cheryl sat quietly for a while and then she looked up and said, 'Do you have a gun here?' Babysitter said, 'Of course not. Why?' And she goes, 'I want to shoot myself. My mum says I'm bad.' Cheryl would have been around 3 at this time. How fucked up is that?
How would she have even known that?
Exactly.
What had
Exactly.
she been saying to her daughter?
Yep. In 1980, the family moved back to Chandler, where Diane thought it'd be a great idea to become a surrogate, and she started the process. As part of the process, Diane would need to undergo psychiatric evaluations. The first psychiatrist referred Diane for more tests after they deemed her neurotic or abnormally sensitive, obsessive, or anxious. The report stated Diane did not do well in areas where she had to demonstrate social cause and effect, reasoning, attention span, and concept formation. These findings were consistent but not absolutely diagnostic of a major psychopathology. The couple's last child reportedly was the result of Miss Downs picking 5 ugly younger men to seduce in order to have a child by one of them. Miss Downs' conversation was effusive, immature, and frequently self-disparaging. This individual has poor ability to express anger in a modulated fashion and tends to have poor behavioral controls. Not liking the first report, Diane would seek out another psychiatrist in 1981 who diagnosed her with a histrionic personality disorder, which is a mental health condition characterized by an overwhelming desire to be noticed and dramatic behavior. But somehow was approved to be a surrogate. By this time, Stephen and Diane would decide to separate and go through a divorce. As a single mother, those close to Diane would go on to say that she was devoted to her children and loved them dearly, whilst neighbours would claim otherwise. I think people close to her said she was a good mother because she was like a surrogate.
We also don't know what she said to them, though.
They would state she was hardly home with them, and one even wrote Diane a letter saying she was worried for the welfare of the children, mainly around Cheryl. According to the neighbour, Diane had said to Cheryl, "You are such a bad little girl. If you don't obey mummy, you deserve to be killed." A little PSA, dear mung beans. Don't be a Karen and write a letter. Go to the police if you think children are at harm, or anyone else for that matter. Diane admitted to the neighbour that she had been abusive to children in the past, but she'd now stopped shaking and screaming at them. It was around this time that Diane was currently pregnant with a surrogate baby and after birth would receive 10 grand and vowed to do it again, and she was now 25 at this time. Neighbours were still concerned for Diane's kids, but apparently not enough to contact the police, with a quote of, "Diane had engaged in a pinch on the shoulder that left blue finger marks, hair pulling, spanking and screaming at frightened little faces."
Or what about child services?
Yeah.
What about that? Why not call, just say, hey, look, just so you know, this is what I've heard, this is what I've witnessed. You should probably check this out.
Yeah, because she would have
Fuck
got her
the
kids.
police, I would go straight to them.
See, and this is why, like, we'll get into it a bit more later, but this is why I'm also kind of like, Stephen, take your fucking kids.
Yeah, because he would have been, do you reckon that sort of behaviour would have been going on while he was...
Surely. Like, maybe not around him, maybe. Who knows?
But you don't think that you would notice a bruise
Exactly.
on your child or...
Exactly. Around this time, Diane was also having many affairs, and I say affairs because most of the men were married. Not blaming her as it takes 2 to tango, but this bitch, I swear. A man by the name of Robert Nick Knickerbocker, number 9, who worked with Diane. I had to. His last name's Knickerbocker. Number 9. Who worked with Diane at the post office would be one of these men to have an affair with her. She quickly became obsessed and begged him to leave his wife and be with her and her children. Nick was less than enthused about the idea, as he'd already been married twice and made it very clear to Diane that he did not want to be a father, including to her kids or his own, and he was so adamant that he went and had a vasectomy. Good job, boys. You don't want kids, but you want to stick it in? Go get the snip instead of making the girl always go on something. Thank you.
Seems like a top bloke.
Yeah. Oh, but I'm all for though. Like, you don't want kids, go get the fucking snip.
Oh, listen, I agree.
Yeah, not a top bloke cheating on his wife.
No.
It's like, remember before he said about like cheating and STDs? In September 1982, Diane was booked for another artificial insemination and she accused Nick of giving her an STD.
She had been fucking around town.
Oh, yeah.
And she accused Nick of giving her
Yep.
an STD.
Yeah. Nick denied it as he said, "Well, I'm only sleeping with you and my wife." And apparently it was common knowledge that Diane was sleeping with at least another 4 men. So might want to check that out with the other men, sis.
Yeah, you dirty cesspool.
Dirty, dirty girl.
Dirty girl.
When this came out, Nick was so worried about his wife. "Oh, are you worried about your wife now?" And to protect her, he confessed to the affair and they agreed to work on their marriage, with Nick now no longer seeing Diane. What a top bloke. Diane left for Kentucky for her insemination and was still hoping that Nick would leave his wife. She would become upset when she got back home to the airport and Stephen was waiting for her instead of Nick. Stephen surprisingly wanted to talk about reconciling and trying to work it out between the two of them. This did not go down well with Diane, and reportedly when she got home she put something black into her purse before running inside and locking herself in the bathroom, threatening to commit suicide. Stephen was obviously afraid of her doing something, and he broke down the door and found Diane on the floor pointing a .22 pistol directly at him and said, "I can't kill myself, but I could kill you instead." Stephen somehow managed to calm her tits and would end up leaving the house with her gun. "Excuse me, sir, take the kids." Like, you fucking left your kids there after seeing your ex-wife do that? This is what I meant. Like, yes, he seemed like a good guy, you know, going to get the snip, but why the fuck are you leaving your kids with this crazy bitch? With her hopes and dreams of being with Nick slowly slipping away, by November 1982, Diane moved back in with Stephen. I don't know why I can't say his name. Stephen. Diane definitely was not letting go of Nick, and it was reported that she even started harassing his wife with prank calls. I mean, we can already tell Diane is a sane, classy woman, and sorry, not sorry, but I need to say this, her face kind of reminds me of Janelle from Teen Mum, and I cannot unsee it. She even sent Nick's wife a letter telling her that Nick was going to file for divorce. But like, how dumb is that? You're the mistress, and you're sending a letter to the wife. He's going to leave you, okay? Somehow in April 1983, Nick and Diane would start up their affair again, and she packed up her life and left for Oregon to start a new job, and Nick promised to follow her.
What? Did he actually? Did he actually?
Yeah, they started their affair up, so I guess he was having sex with her.
He walked away from it.
He apparently helped her pack her things. In my mind, he just wants her out. And he did mention that he saw a .38 pistol and a target pistol in the trunk of her car. Americans, this is why in Australia we have gun laws, and only people who are sane and hold a license can have a gun.
And you have to have a legitimate reason as to why you need to have a gun. Protection is not accepted.
Yeah, she should not have had more than one gun. She should not have had any guns.
She should not have had kids.
She should not have had kids. Once Diane had left, Nick did the sneaky and told Diane that he wasn't going to leave his wife and would not be joining her in Oregon.
Okay. All right.
But also, I'm like, with the startup of the affair, it's like, were you actually sleeping with her again? Or were you just saying that? Because that kind of, to me, it's like, don't stick your dick in crazy.
But, I mean, he already had, right?
Yeah.
She's probably like, I don't really have anything to lose.
She would beg and plead for him to come, and even came back to Arizona to talk to him in person. Nick stated, "I did not kiss her. I did not hug her. I didn't tell her I loved her. I didn't say anything. I only said about 20 words to her the whole time she was there. I told her I wasn't going to Oregon. I told her I didn't want to be a daddy. She talked at me like always." But that's the kicker, right? She talked at me like always. You're sick of this crazy bitch. He was like, oh my God. Sex was probably really good. It always is with
The
crazy.
crazy ones?
Yeah. Diane, realising her pleads were no longer working, she would return to Oregon. I wish this is where our story ended. Well, actually, I wish it ended with Diane getting help and her kids going to a better home, but here we are. 3 weeks later, Diane would take her children, Christy, Cheryl, and Danny, to a friend's house in Masola, Oregon? ?
Yeah.
I think that's how you say it. That's how I'm going to say it. Masola, Oregon. To see her horses. It was dark when they left, and Diane would go on to tell police that they all had decided to go sightseeing along the old Mohawk Road, which was a dark and deserted stretch of road in the Springfield area.
Listen, in my experience, there's no better place to go sightseeing than somewhere you can't see sights.
All of a sudden, a bush-haired stranger flagged her car down. She decided to stop to see if he needed help. Because that's what you would do with your kids in the car on a deserted road
I know
at
I
night.
would. Yeah.
I'd go, there's someone, they need help.
Yeah, especially someone with bushy hair and...
Not the bushy-haired.
No, especially the bushy hair.
Oh.
But then also, like, you're in the middle of nowhere that you're familiar with. What are you...
Yeah.
I don't know.
Diane would allege that the man had demanded to take her car, and when she refused, the man would lean into the car and shoot her 3 children before turning the gun on Diane and shooting her in the left arm. If he wanted your car, why did he shoot you in the arm?
Also, for the sake of my children, if all he wanted was the car and we got to leave and we're okay, take the car.
Yeah.
I'll sort something out with my kids, you take the car.
Luckily, she was able to escape by pretending to throw the keys away, distracting the carjacker long enough for her to drive off at high speed and head to the hospital. A witness would later come forward that they had driven behind Diane from the scene to the hospital, and apparently she was driving so slow that the speed didn't even register on her speedometer, on her speedo.
Here's the other thing. A man reaches in your car, shoots your kids, shoots you. How did she get away? Does she go into the details of how she got away?
Yeah, she said she was pretending to throw her keys into the bush, and he was going, oh, where's the keys? And she's like, haha, I've got the keys, and then jumped in the car and drove off.
So she's out of the car.
Yeah, apparently.
So at what point does she... So she got out to help him? He flagged her down, she got out.
Her story just doesn't add up.
I mean, let's be real. That did not happen. But...
Just doesn't make sense, dull.
There's a hole in your story, there, Diane, there, Diane. There's a hole in your story and one in your arm.
At 10:48 on May 19th, 1983, Diane would pull up outside the Willamette? Diane would pull up outside the Willamette, that's what I'm going with, hospital in Springfield, Oregon, shouting that someone had shot her children. Hospital staff would rush to the car and found the 3 children slumped inside, and Diane had been shot herself in the left arm that was now wrapped in a blood-soaked towel.
So she had time to wrap her own arm in a blood-soaked towel during this really quick trip to the hospital. Guessing her kids didn't have any bandages, any wraps, any tourniquets, any...
To me, that is not a mother.
That's a motherfucker.
That's a motherfucker. Like, if I got shot and my kids got shot, touch wood, that would never happen, I would be trying to do stuff for them first. Like, I know the whole...
Well, I would assess...
When the plane's going down, put your mask on first.
I would assess how, serious my injuries were. And if I did need to attend to mine, if I could do a real quick job, whatever, I might do that. But I'm not leaving my kids suffering without trying to help them.
Unfortunately, 7-year-old Cheryl was already deceased, and 3-year-old Danny and 8-year-old Christy were alive, but in critical condition. And when doctors told this news to Diane, her response was rather shocking, and I quote, "Do you mean the bullet missed his heart? Gee whiz."
Huh?
That's what she said.
Do you mean the bullet missed his heart? Gee whiz.
Yeah. What the fuck? Doctors frantically started to work on the little ones and noticed that Diane had been shot in her left arm, almost exactly midway between her wrist and elbow. Strangely enough, the first person that Diane called was Nick. You know, the guy she was obsessed with, not the father of her kids.
Shocker.
Another odd thing occurred when Diane would go visit her daughter Christy in intensive care. Christy reacted in fear, eyes widened, and her heart rate increased dramatically from 104 to 147 BPM. Police would later go on to say that Christy would become a credible witness, but at the time of the shooting, she suffered a stroke and was unable to speak. Police would obviously become involved, and given what had happened and was unfolding, they were already completely sus on Diane that they even went and spoke to Nick. It was his statement that would solidify what they already knew, that Diane had tried to kill her children in order to be with her lover. Nick would say, and I quote, "I wouldn't be with her if the children were around. It was an affair. It didn't seem right." Okay, sir. It didn't seem right to cheat on your wife. Okay.
But then there's probable cause.
Police would gain a search warrant, as Diane stated she didn't own a gun, which was obviously a lie, and police would also find her diary, which was filled with references to Nick and his hesitation with their relationship.
She's delusional.
Yeah.
Hesitation to... He was saying no.
No. So, what, in her head, she's like, maybe if I kill my kids, we can be together?
Well, yeah, because he doesn't want kids of his own, let alone to take care of her kids. So she's thinking, I get rid of all of them. There's one hurdle.
I find it so wild when people think murder is going to solve all their problems.
Yeah. Do you know what I also think as well? Is that this is, your third, fourth family annihilator?
Yeah.
Can we maybe step away from that?
Yeah,
just a minute.
Yeah, well, my next few, I definitely will be.
Good, thank you. That's all I asked.
Maybe for the rest of the season I'll try.
Okay.
She would be arrested on February 28th, 1984, and just 9 months after shooting her 3 children. On June 17th, 1974, Diane was convicted of the murder of Cheryl Downs and the attempted murder of Christy and Stephen. Christy would end up recovering her speech and would stand trial, and when asked who had shot her siblings and herself, she stated tearfully that her mum had done it and would go on to describe the event. Obviously also coming out that she drove slow to the hospital in the hopes the children would bleed out, because the witness earlier.
I also think that's just fucked up.
So fucked up.
Like, first of all, don't kill you. And that's one thing that I don't understand too. If you want kids, you need to make sure that you're prepared to be a good parent.
Yeah.
You plan it, you take care of that kind of stuff, right? If you are one and for whatever reason you don't have it in you to be a parent, instead of killing or beating or harming this child, why time and time again do we not see people being put into the system? Like, I know it's horrible to go into the system, but I would rather take my chances in someone else being able to raise my kid than me stubbing it out straight away. Like, as far as like stubbing the life out, you know?
Definitely. And also grandparents. Your husband, Stephen, the dad.
Well, they have, like, in New Zealand, sorry to make it quick, but in, like, New Zealand, Samoan and Māori people have this thing where if the person is not able to raise a child, they will basically nominate someone in the family to raise the child as their own.
Yeah.
So, like, why can't they have something like that? Surely someone, if the two options are death or you take this child so that child has, like, a good chance at life.
Yeah.
Surely you'd want to go for that one, right?
I guess that's probably also where it comes down to in her mind. She couldn't logically... So it was like death was the only answer.
She couldn't see past her own nose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think there was, like, a bit of pride there, though? Like, I'm not going to be a failure and have someone else raise my kids.
Yeah, like that whole runaway mother. I don't know what the fuck she was thinking. Also, surprisingly at trial, Diane appeared in court heavily pregnant. She claimed that she missed her children so much and was unable to see them. I'm not sure who the father was, but this woman should not have been able to have kids. The end.
Yeah, apparently it was one of the guards.
Oh, really?
She got knocked up by one of the guards.
That's so fucked up.
It is.
During the trial, Diane would try for all the sympathy by stating that she was sexually abused by her father from the age of 11, and on one occasion he drove her out to the desert and told her to remove her blouse and bra. Her father would deny the allegations, and years later Diane would actually retract those allegations. So that's where I'm like, was the rape actually a thing? Because you're just saying your dad.
Before.
Yeah. 10 days prior to sentencing, Diane would give birth to a daughter who she named Amy. Amy would be taken by the state and adopted shortly afterwards. She has now changed her name, which I don't blame her. Upon her sentencing, Judge Gregory Foote made it clear that he never wanted Diane to be freed, and she was sentenced to life in prison plus 50 years. Diane would be sent to the Oregon Women's Correctional Center in Salem, and in 1988 she escaped the prison by scaling an 18-foot-high fence. Officers were worried that she would come looking for her children, Christy and Danny, who had actually been adopted by prosecutor Fred Hughey and his wife. I thought that was really nice, like the prosecutor.
Oh, yeah.
That's super sweet. And sadly, Danny was now in a wheelchair as well. Surprisingly, she did not try to contact her children, and 10 days later she was found only 4 blocks away from the prison in a house with 4 men.
She only made it 4 blocks.
4 blocks to get some dick.
4 blocks, 4 men, 10 days.
She was sent to a maximum security facility in New Jersey, and in 1994 she was transferred to California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, where she gained a degree in general studies. At 68 years old, she now resides in Valley State Prison for Women in Chowchilla, California. And thank the Lord, her request for parole has been denied.
Annexed.
And that, dear mung beans, is the case of Diane Downs, the attention-seeking bitch of a woman who should never have been able to have children.
Yeah. So, about that. No more family annihilators, please. Just for a minute. Not
Okay.
forever.
Yeah.
Just a minute.
I'll take a little break, sorry.
Yeah, because there's like, listen, okay, yeah, I've done some really horrible cases. I've done horrible cases. I know I have. But there's just something that's really, to me, something super, super monstrous about somebody. For me, okay, hear me out. For me, when it's a mother
Yeah.
that does it to her offspring,
Yeah.
when you look at the mothers as being the nurturing ones, sure, there are fathers that are just as nurturing, but you look at the mother as the nurturer. And that's not me being misogynistic. That's literally where you go for love, right? To see the opposite of that provided to just innocent kids, I don't know. That stuff crawls under my skin. I don't like that.
It's dumb fucked up.
Yeah.
Alright, I'll step away from that for a little bit and I'll go in a new direction for a
Just
while.
a minute. God, I'm excited.
Oh, just you wait, sunshine. Just
fuck
you
me.
wait.
Just you wait and join.
And on that note, dear mung beans, goodbye.
Bye.